Hello, chat. How are you? How are you guys doing? What is up, Kareem? Kareem Ezet. Glad you could join. What's up, Max? Hey, Didi. Leia Hea? Is that how you say it? Leia Hea? Oyama. What's up, Oyama? Hey, Teria. Nice of you to join. Streety, Cupie. What's up? Kid Like 101. Hey, Jonathan. How you doing? Patrick. Thanks for joining. Nikki. Glad you could join. What's up, Katie? I'm glad you're here. All right. Oh, guess what I'm doing tomorrow? I'm getting shot. I'm getting shot tomorrow. I'm getting my second vaccine shot. I'm so excited. Like afterwards, and then I can go anywhere. Go anywhere I want without my mask. Is my VPN on? Nope. I made sure to turn it off. Thanks for the reminder though. Yeah, sometimes I forget. Yeah, how many of you guys have your vaccine shot? I think. What is up? Hey Losh, thanks for joining. Glad you could join. Hey Hope. Getting a haircut. Well, why? Do you think I need a haircut? Probably. Is this too long? Is it weird? Yeah, at least I have hair. Alright. Look what I have today. It's like it's I don't know what it is. It's potato chips. It seems like it's just original flavor potato chips. I don't know. It doesn't seem to have any special flavor with it. But let's see. What's up, Lime? Lime the social cat. You got one shot of Pfizer. Let my hair grow out? How long should I let my hair grow out? I hate long hair. It just takes a lot of maintenance, you know? Alright. Let's see. It looks like ordinary potato chips. And it is. No flavor. Or original flavor. Do you guys like original flavor chips? Does that do anything for you? I never get original flavor. I always get like some kind of, I don't know, sour cream and onion, barbecue or something. Who buys original flavor potato chips? Well, me, apparently. Who likes that stuff? It's just salty. You thought I was a white dude? Nope. I'm totally Asian. Mid-length hair is low maintenance. No. This hair is low maintenance. Look at this. I barely have to do anything. I don't even have to shower. Haven't showered in a week. You're fully vaccinated? Awesome. Good job. Yep. I'll be fully vaccinated tomorrow. Pickle is the best? Ew. What do you mean? That's disgusting. Why do you like pickles? Original is good for dips. Oh, I say that's my problem. I never eat dip. I just eat yeah, dip is with potato chips, like with chips, you just want to tear open the bag and eat it, right? It's like a quick thing. I feel like dip is too there's two it's one extra step, you know what I mean? And I'm just way too lazy for that. Sour cream and onion is the best. All right. All right, what is the best flavor? Huh? Let's look it up. So what is... All right. Lay's chips flavors. Lay's is like among my top chips, next to maybe Doritos. I think so. I think the Lay's sour cream, the sour cream and onion is the best. Like that's the one I always get, and then the number 2 would be probably barbecue. Where's the barbecue? Oh yeah, they have different barbecues these days, huh? Isn't there one? No, there was like an old barbecue one. Huh? Isn't there? I know there's this barbecue, but there's another one. Barbecue. Yeah, this is my number 2. This is really good. Lemon flavored. Oh, ranch Doritos. Oh, that's my bread and butter. Okay, ranch Doritos is the best. That's the only one I get. I hate the cheesy Doritos. You know what I mean? Those, yeah. What was it called? Nacho cheese. Doritos, nacho cheese. Yeah, these are not that good. I think it's because when I was young, I ate too many of these, and then it just ruined it for me. I can't eat these anymore. But like the ranch one, oh god, oh these are so good. Yeah, the Lay's old fashioned barbecue. I've eaten the lemon flavored before. I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. It's not as good as the sour cream and onion. All right, let's get started. Let's get started. All right, let's do a recap of what happened last week. Okay, what happened last week? There were a lot of revelations in last week's chapter. A lot of revelations. It was like reading the Bible. So Ling Hu Chong and the group of Hangshan students, they were going to rescue the rest of the Hangshan school who were being besieged. Right. So they found them, and they were in the process of being attacked by a group of the demon sect, right? The demon cult. So they come in. Ling Hu Chong and his group of Hangshan disciples come in to save the rest of the school. And in the fight, Ling Hu Chong's like freaking like flying around the battlefield, just beating everyone up. Right? He's like super powerful now. He's kicking ass and taking names. And chewing bubblegum at the same time. So he revealed, after the battle, it's revealed that the attackers were not actually from the demon cult. Okay, they were actually from the Songshan school. Because remember, the Songshan, they want to merge the 5 sword schools into one. Okay, so and then the leader of the Songshan school, he wants to be the leader of that merged, that big merged school at the end. So he's trying to get everyone to merge, and the people who don't, the people who refuse, he's trying to eliminate them, right? So that's why the Songshan school attacked the Hangshan school. Now, if you remember, the Hangshan school has three sisters that basically run the school. There's one, they had one leader, but there's 3 sisters that are basically the top sisters of the school, and one of them died in one of the earlier chapters. So now there are 2 left, right? So he rescues them, and then they're traveling on the river together, going somewhere, and they run into these dudes who try to sink their boat. All right. But of course, Ling Hu Chong catches them, and he interrogates them, and it turns out that they were trying to stop the Hangshan school from going to Shaolin, because they thought they were going to the Shaolin temple to help the Shaolin temple. Now, what was happening? What is happening at the Shaolin temple? No, apparently the Shaolin temple has captured Ying Ying. All right, if you remember a long time ago, Ying Ying was the old granny that taught him how to play the zither. Yeah, so he thought he thought she was an old granny, but it turns out she's like a young girl. Right? And so she is currently captured by the Shaolin school, and he doesn't know why yet, right? And these people were trying to stop them from going to help the Shaolin school, right? Because they thought that the Hangshan school was going to help the Shaolin school. So that was how he found out that Ying Ying was captured by Shaolin. Now the two sisters of the Hangshan school, they go ahead of the group, and then they go going to the Shaolin school to request that they free Ying Ying, and then Ling Huchang was supposed to look after the rest of the Hangshan disciples, right? So he goes to this restaurant and he meets Mr. Mo Da, who is the leader of the Hangshan school. This is the other Hangshan school. Remember that both schools have the same name. It's a little bit confusing, but Mr. Mo Da is the leader of Hangshan. He meets them at a restaurant, and Mr. Mo Da kind of tells him what's been happening in the world while he was imprisoned in that prison. So it turns out that, remember, long time ago, Ling Huchang was wounded, right? He was very hurt, and then he passed out. And when he woke up, Ying Ying was gone, right? Ying Ying was helping him, was taking care of him while he was sick. But when he woke up, she was gone, and he woke up in the Shaolin temple, right? And he didn't know where she went. So Mr. Mo Da tells him what had been happening. So what happened was Ying Ying carried him to the Shaolin temple, hoping that the monks at the Shaolin temple would save his life. All right. And she basically gave up her freedom for them to save Ling Huchang's life. So it turns out that looks like the Shaolin monks agreed, and because Ying Ying had killed some of their members, they imprisoned her, right? So that was why he woke up at Shaolin, and that was why she disappeared. So Mr. Mo Da tells him to go rescue her, and then he'll stay behind to take care of the Hangshan disciples. And that was where we left off. How's that? How's that recap? The hottest granny. This is a story. This is not history. This is a story. What's up, Donna? You're on chapter 3? Okay. Yeah, you got a long way to go. There's a lot to this story, but thanks for joining. Everyone's in love with Ling Huchang except for his apprentice sister. Yes, seriously. Oh yeah, I remember Yilin is also there, and she's like, I think last chapter she was crying a little bit, and he didn't know what was going on. He's like totally clueless. He's smart in everything, but then with like romance and love and stuff, he is like totally clueless. Our hero. But who does Ling Hu love? Yeah, who does he love? All right, let's do this. Okay. Chapter 26. Besieging the Temple, Part 1. Ling Huchang traveled quickly to the north and reached a large town on a clear and beautiful day. He went into a restaurant in the city. Hubei's most famous pastry was dried bean curd, with vegetables and meat wrapped inside a skin made from bean curd powder. It was very tasty. Ling Huchang finished 3 plates of these before he came out of the shop. As he stepped out, he saw a group of people walking towards him. Among them was a short and plump fellow. Surprisingly, he was old ancestor of the Yellow River, Old Man. Ling Huchang was really happy to see them and called out loudly, "Old Man, how are you?" Old Man was surprised and looked at him awkwardly. He hesitated for a moment before he drew out his saber. Ling Huchang already took a step forward to welcome them. "Zhu Qianchu!" He had not said anything more when Old Man lifted his saber and chopped down on him. Even though there was a lot of power in this chop, the accuracy was off as Old Man missed Ling Huchang's shoulder by about a foot. He cried out and chopped down again. Ling Huchang was frightened and quickly jumped back. "Mr. Old, I'm Ling Huchang." Old Man replied with a shout. "Of course I know you're Ling Huchang. Everyone heard you already. Sacred Lady gave us an order that anyone who meets Ling Huchang must kill him. She will then shower us with gifts for following this order. Everyone understand?" "We understand," the group of people who were with him replied loudly. Remember, he still has a bounty on his head. The bounty given by Ying Ying because she was jealous, I guess. Yeah. Ling Huchang's face turned red, thinking about the day Ying Ying gave that order for Old Man to spread in Jianghu. The order was for them to kill Ling Huchang when they met him, but she actually gave that order because she hoped Ling Huchang would never leave her side. It was also to inform the heroes of Jianghu that young Lady Run was not crazily in love with Ling Huchang, but instead hated him to the bone. Later, after so many unforeseen events, he had completely forgotten about this order. At this time, after hearing what Old Man said, he realized that her order had not been cancelled yet. When Old Man informed them of the Sacred Lady's order, the people in the group did not believe him. In order to save Ling Huchang's life, she had willingly gone to Shaolin to sacrifice her life. At that time, the news of the incident in which she killed 4 secular disciples of the Shaolin Temple had already spread and created a sensation in Jianghu. Everybody praised her bravery for going to Shaolin, but they also found it really funny and also thought that this young lady wanted to show Shaolin that she was better than them by going there. It was clear that she loved Ling Huchang deeply because she was willing to exchange her own life to save him. It was also clear that she didn't want to admit to her feelings for him, but it was unavoidable that everyone else understood her feelings for him. Concerning this matter, Ying Ying's subordinates from the unorthodox sects were aware of it extensively, but the orthodox schools also knew some of the details. In everyday chats, this matter often became a laughingstock, so when the people in this group suddenly saw Ling Huchang, they were pleasantly surprised, but at the same time they also didn't know what to do. Yeah, what is up with the paragraphs in this chapter? Suddenly there's like random breaks in the middle. Someone messed up in their formatting. Old Man said, "Master Linghu, Sacred Lady ordered us to kill you, but your martial heart is too high. Just then my saber didn't manage to chop you. Please show mercy and don't take my life. Friends, everyone already saw that it's not that we didn't want to kill Master Linghu, it's just that we couldn't kill him. Old Man couldn't do it. So of course, none of you could do it either. Isn't that right?" Everyone erupted in laughter and shouted, "Right." One person shouted, "Just now we've all fought with all our hearts until both parties are so tired that we couldn't even kill each other. It's better if we just stop fighting. Everyone, let's go and fight in drinking wine. If there's a hero here who can make Master Linghu dead drunk, then later, when we meet the Sacred Lady, we'll tell her that we managed to kill him." Everyone laughed madly, holding to their stomachs while saying, "Wonderful, wonderful." Another person laughingly said, "Sacred Lady wants us to kill Master Linghu, but she didn't say that we have to use swords to do it, so it makes sense to use beautiful wine to make him dead drunk. This can be called using wisdom to subdue the enemy instead of brawn. Cheering loudly, they crowded around Ling Huchong and took him to the biggest wine shop in the city. There were more than 40 people in the group, and they filled up 6 tables in that shop. A few of them knocked on the benches, calling out, "Bring out the wine!" Once Ling Huchong sat down, he asked, "How is the sacred lady? I'm worried to death." When that group of people heard him worrying about Ying Ying, they were all really happy. All right, so they know that she loves him, right? And they're all friends, right? They don't really want to kill him. So everybody decided already that on the 15th of the 12th month, we're all going to the Shaolin Temple to get Sacred Lady out of there. In the last few days, the people in the Alliance had been fighting endlessly to decide who's going to be the leader, and had injured each other. It's good that Master Ling Hu already arrived. If this leadership isn't taken by you, then who else can do it? If another person were to lead this alliance, later, when we get the Sacred Lady out of the temple, she definitely won't be happy, Old Man told him. A white-bearded old fellow laughed. Yeah, Master Ling Hu must be the chief of this alliance. Even if we later meet with difficulties and we're unable to get the Sacred Lady out, when she heard the news of you leading us, she'll still be extremely happy. This position of chief is a match made in heavens for you, and only Master Ling Hu can take it. This matter of chief is not important. The most important thing is to rescue the Sacred Lady out of the temple. Even if I died a cruel death in doing so, I'm still willing to do it, Ling Huchong said. He didn't just say these words thoughtlessly. He really appreciated Ying Ying's sacrifice. Ying Ying sacrificing her own life for him. Even if he had to die for her, he wouldn't have given it much thought. However, if it were just any other day, even though he still would have thought the same thing in his heart, he wouldn't have said this publicly. Now, this speech of risking death was said with passion and righteousness. It warned everyone not to make fun of Ying Ying. When they heard him say this, they were all reassured. They felt that the Sacred Lady's judgment was right about this person. That white-bearded person said, "So, Master Ling Hu is actually a passionate and righteous hero. If that false rumor in Jianghu were true, that Master Ling Hu doesn't care about anyone but himself, then everyone here would have turned cold towards you." Ling Huchong said, "For the last few months I was imprisoned and didn't know anything about the things happening in the Jianghu. But night and day I was thinking about Sacred Lady until all my hair turned white. Come. Let me salute my fellow friends with a cup. Thank you everyone for striving for the Sacred Lady." Saying this, he stood up and lifted his cup to drink, and was followed by the others. "Mr. Old, you said that many friends are fighting for the chief position and injuring each other needlessly. It's still not too late for us to go there immediately and advise them to stop," Ling Huchong said. "True. Zhu Qiangchu and Nightcat already went. We should go catch up with them," Old Man said. "Where are they?" Ling Huchong asked. "Everyone's gathering at the Yellow Keep Plain," Old Man said. "Yellow Keep Plain?" "It's west of Xiangyang in the middle of the mountain Jing," that white-bearded old man said. "Oh. Let's eat and drink quickly, then we'll go to the Yellow Keep Plain. We've already fought for 3 days and 3 nights, drinking wine up till now, and everyone had already thought of every means, but no one's been able to make Ling Huchong dead drunk. Later, when everyone meets the Sacred Lady, you can confess this to her," Ling Huchong said. They all laughed and said, Master Ling Hu's wine capacity is like an ocean. Even if we drink for 3 days and 3 nights, we're afraid that we won't be able to keep up." Walking side by side with the old man, Ling Huchong asked, "How's your daughter's illness? Is she much better now?" Remember, the old man's daughter, right, was the girl who Ling Huchong gave up his blood for. Remember, he cut himself and gave her his blood because he had drank a bunch of medicines that were supposed to cure her. Old man replied, Master, your heart is concerned about a lot of matters. Although she's not better, I'm happy that she also hasn't gotten any worse. Ling Huchang had been holding a question in his heart since the beginning. Seeing the people behind him were tens of feet away, he asked, A lot of friends said that the Sacred Lady has been benevolent to everybody. I don't understand how she could have been kind to so many people in the Jianghu when she is still so very young. Master really doesn't know the reason? Old man asked. Ling Huchang shook his head. I don't know. Master isn't an outsider, so we don't need to conceal it from you, but everyone has sworn an oath to the Sacred Lady to not divulge this secret. Master, please forgive our sin, Old man said. Ling Huchang nodded. Is it because it's inconvenient to say, or is it better not to say it? Leave it to Sacred Lady to personally tell you. Won't that be much better? The earlier the day I get to see her in person, the better. On the road, they met two more groups of people going to the Yellow Keep plain. When combined, the three groups consisted of more than 100 people. They arrived at the Yellow Keep plain really late at night and saw a gathering at the west side of the plain. They were still a li away from the gathering, but the sounds of people calling out could already be heard. Ling Huchang quickened his steps towards the crowd. Under the moonlight, he could see a very large crowd surrounding an empty ground. He guessed there were more than 1,000 people gathering around. He heard a person shouting, Chief! Chief! Naturally, there's only one person who becomes chief. With 6 of you guys, how do you all become chief? Another person answered, The 6 of us can be considered as 1, and 1 as 6. If you obey our 6 brothers' orders, then we 6 brothers are chief. You talk too much. We'll tear you into 4 pieces first before we talk further. Ling Huchang didn't need to see who was talking. He already knew that it was one of the Peach Valley 6 fairies. But each of their voices sounded almost the same, so he couldn't tell which one it was. Everyone was frightened by what that Peach Valley fairy said and didn't dare to shout anymore. However, it was apparent that the crowd refused to accept the Peach Valley 6 fairies' words as final. Some people at the outer edge of the crowd were still scolding, while others were laughing loudly unseen, and some were throwing rocks around. It was total chaos. Well, I guess we meet the Peach Valley 6 fairies again. Who's throwing rocks at old man? Peach Valley, Peach Tree Leaf Fairy. Oh no, this translator is using a different name for them. I'm not familiar. So Leaf Fairy loudly shouted. Wait, who's throwing rocks at old man? Leaf Fairy loudly shouted. You're old man, someone answered from the darkness. What? If you're my brother's old man, then you're my old man too? Flower Fairy indignantly asked. Another person said, That's not necessarily true. Several hundred people erupted in laughter when they heard this. Why not necessarily true? Flower Fairy was confused. I also don't know why. I only have 1 son, another person chimed in. You only have 1 son? What's that got to do with us? Root Fairy questioned. Another person with a rough voice laughed loudly. It got nothing to do with you, but probably got something to do with your brothers. Has it got to do anything with me, then? Trunk Fairy inquired. One of the earlier person laughed. Well, you have to look whether your appearance is similar to them or not. Do you think my appearance is somewhat similar? Come out and take a look. What's there to look at? Look at it yourself in the mirror. That person laughed. Suddenly, 4 shadows moved extremely fast. They pushed forward and grabbed that person. That person was tall and big. He probably weighed around 200 caddies. The Peach Valley 6 fairies had caught 4 of his limbs, but they didn't tear him apart. The 4 fairies looked at his face under the moonlight. Then Fruit Fairy said, Doesn't look like me. How can I look that ugly? Number 3, I'm afraid he looks a bit like you. Peh! Am I uglier than you? All the realms' heroes are here. Let's ask them to compare. The people in the crowd had seen earlier that the Peach Valley 6 fairies weren't pleasant to look at with their weird body shapes and ugly faces. If they had to pick which one was the best looking, then that wouldn't be an easy task at all. Right now, they were looking at that big man seized in the hands of the four fairies. At any moment, he could be torn to four pieces. Everyone was feeling apprehensive, and no one dared to laugh. Ling Hu Chang was aware of the temperaments of the Peach Valley Six Fairies. If something went slightly wrong, then this big man would be torn to pieces. He called out clearly, "Peach Valley Six Fairies, how about if you let Ling Hu Chang appraise you?" As he said this, he slowly stepped out from the crowd. Oh, did you miss them, Hope? Dun, 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 dun. When they heard the name Ling Hu Chang, it created a sensation throughout the crowd. More than 1,000 pairs of eyes were now trained on him. But Ling Hu Chang didn't look away from the Peach Valley Six Fairies, afraid that they might get excited and rip that big man apart. He said, "Put this friend down first, then I'll have a look at you." The four fairies immediately put the big man down. This man's stature was very grand, and when he stood up on the ground, he looked like an iron pagoda. He had just escaped from death and was still scared stiff. His face was gray like a corpse, and his whole body was trembling. He knew that trembling like that was not appropriate for a hero, but his body was trembling by itself, and he couldn't stop it from shaking. He wanted to say a few words to save his face, but he only managed to tremble. Ling Hu Chang saw him scared to death, but still looking handsome. He said to the Peach Valley Six Fairies, "Six Peach Tree brothers, you don't look like this friend at all. Compared to him, you're even more handsome. Root Fairies' bones are wonderful. Trunk Fairies' stature is big and tall. Branch Fairies' limbs are slender. Leaf Fairies' eyebrows are distinct, and eyes are elegant. Flower Fairies' his eyes are like the stars, and Fruit Fairy is full of vigor. Whoever meets any of you, he will promptly recognize your six righteous and heroic faces, young, middle-aged, and handsome." The crowd heard this and burst into laughter, but the Peach Valley Six Fairies were very happy. Old Man had already experienced suffering under the hands of the Peach Valley Six Fairies before, so he knew that they were not to be trifled with. He addressed the crowd. "In my opinion, looking around at all the heroes here, you all have many types of good martial arts, but speaking of facial appearances, no one can compare with the Peach Valley Six Fairies." After hearing this, the crowd started to call out. Someone hollered, "Not only handsome, but also elegant. No one in the world can come close to them." Another one called out, "When Pan An retreated, Song Yu also retreated." Another one chimed in Wu Lin, the number 1 to number 6 most handsome men are these 6 people. Master Ling Hu is number 7 at most." The Peach Valley Six Fairies grinned from ear to ear, thinking that those people were actually praising them. They didn't realize that they were actually being teased. Branch Fairy said, "My mom used to say that the 6 of us are stinking ugly, so she was wrong." Another person laughed, "Of course she's wrong. There are only 6 of you. How do you turn into stinking ugly?" So apparently there's a translator's note. Stinking ugly in Chinese contains the letter 8 in the phrase, but it doesn't translate well in English here with the joke. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Translator. Old Man said in a loud voice, "Friends, we have some luck tonight. Master Ling Hu was just about to single-handedly break through the Shaolin Temple and get the sacred lady out. But he met us on the way and heard that everyone is here, so he came to talk with us. He said their appearances are handsome. Naturally, we'll regard the Peach Valley's 6 fairies." When the crowd heard this, they burst into laughter again. Old Man waved his hand, telling them to stop, but among the laughter, someone said, "Breaking through the Shaolin Temple to save the sacred lady is a big matter. What does it have to do with facial appearances? In my opinion, we should just offer Master Ling Hu the chief position and ask him to preside over all matters and give out orders. Everyone will then respectfully comply with his orders. What does everyone think of this?" Everyone in the crowd knew that the sacred lady was trapped in Shaolin because of Ling Huchong. They also knew that Ling Huchong's martial art was outstanding. That day in Henan, he fought together with Xiang Wenxian against heroes from all paths. That incident created a sensation in Jianghu. But even if he was weak, they would still have given him the position of chief in respect to the sacred lady. When they heard what the old man and the other people say, when they heard what old man and the other person said, they were all happy and started to cheer and applaud. Flower Fairy suddenly said awkwardly, "After we rescued young Lady Run out of the temple, will she become Ling Huchong's wife?" All of the people here revered young Lady Run, but they also thought what Flower Fairy said wasn't wrong, but they would never have dared to publicly say this. Ling Huchong was completely embarrassed and stayed silent. Leaf Fairy said, "He wants a wife and also wants to become chief. That's too nice of him. We'll help him rescue his wife, but it's better if the position of chief is occupied by us, the 6 brothers." Root Fairy said, "Yeah, only if his skill is better than us, then we wouldn't have to discuss this matter anymore." Suddenly, Root, Trunk, Branch, and Fruit Fairies moved together. They grabbed Ling Huchong's 4 limbs and lifted him up in the air. They moved really fast, and there was no hint that they were going to do this, so it was too late for Ling Huchong to avoid it. The crowd was frightened to see this, and they called out together, "Don't do that! Let go of him!" Leaf Fairy laughed. "Don't worry, everyone. We're not going to hurt him. We're just going to make him promise to make us chief." He had not finished speaking when Root, Trunk, Branch, and Fruit Fairies suddenly shouted strangely and tossed Ling Huchong away. They blurted out, Why are you using such a demonical method?" When Ling Huchong's 4 limbs were grabbed by these 4 idiots, he was really afraid that they would really rip him apart, so he immediately used his art of essence absorbing. The 4 peach tree fairies felt their internal energy flowing out of their palms. When they tried to use their inner energy to resist the flow, it actually poured out even faster, so they were frightened and quickly let go of him. Ling Huchong somersaulted and landed steadily on his feet. Oh, he's super powerful now, guys. I know, right? Even their mom tells them they're ugly. What the heck? How ugly are they? Leaf Fairy hastily asked, "What?" Root Fairy and Fruit Fairy answered together, This Ling Huchong's martial art is really weird. We can't hold on to him." "It's not that we can't hold on to him, just that suddenly we don't want to hold on to him anymore." The people in the crowd cheered loudly and said, "Peach Valley 6 fairies, do you submit now?" "Ling Huchong is our 6 brothers' good friend. Ling Huchong is the same as the Peach Valley 6 fairies. Peach Valley 6 fairies is the same as Ling Huchong. If Ling Huchong becomes chief, then it'll be just like the 6 fairies becoming chief. So what's there to submit to?" Root Fairy said. "In the whole world, how can you not submit to yourself? Your question is too stupid." When the crowd looked at the expressions of the 6 fairies, they guessed that the Peach Valley 6 fairies had suffered a loss when they grabbed Ling Huchong, but they were now just saving face and didn't want to acknowledge it. Although the crowd didn't really understand the reason, they started cheering and laughing anyway. Ling Huchong said, "Friends, this time we're going to meet the Sacred Lady and also rescue our many friends who have been trapped in the Shaolin Temple. Shaolin Temple is Wulin's most respected place, and their 72 unique skills have long been famous for several hundred years. Any sect alone would not be able to contend against them, but we'll just overwhelm them with numbers, since we have over 1,000 heroes here, and more good men to come. Although our martial arts is inferior compared to the Shaolin monks and their secular disciples, we'll surely win by fighting them 10 to 1. Everyone cheered. Right. Is it really true that Shaolin monks have 3 heads and 6 arms? Ling Huchong continued. However, even though the Shaolin's great masters have imprisoned the Sacred Lady, they haven't treated her badly. The temple's great masters are learned and righteous, eminent monks. they are also merciful, and people respect them for their virtues. So even if we destroy the Shaolin Temple, I'm afraid Jianghu's heroes will say that we've won only by relying on our sheer numbers, which is not the behavior of heroes. That's why, in my opinion, we should talk respectfully with them first, before fighting them. Before fighting, then we can say that we've yielded a step to the Shaolin Temple. This way, we would put the Sacred Lady and our other friends out of danger. We would also avoid a big battle, which is a good thing. Master Linghu's words suit well with me. If we're really going to fight, then both sides will suffer many deaths and injuries, Zhu Qianqiu said. But Master Linghu's words don't suit me. If both parties don't fight, then there won't be many deaths and injuries on both sides. Where's the fun then? Branch Fairy said. We already agreed that Master Linghu is chief. So everyone... Wait. I think I gave this guy like an evil voice. We already agreed that Master Linghu is chief. So everyone must listen to this order, Zhu Qianqiu said. Correct. You should let us 6 brothers give orders out, Root Fairy said. The crowd heard those 6 brothers creating a scene and obstructing the real issues being discussed. They were mad, and a lot of people grasped the handles of their swords and sabers, were already waiting for Linghu Chang's order. Once the order was given, they would immediately chop these 6 brothers into pieces. Although their martial arts were higher, they would never be able to continuously block the attacks from dozens of people. Zhu Qianqiu said, What does a chief do? Naturally, they give orders out. If he doesn't give orders out, then how can he still be called chief? Of course, this character Zhu means he has to give out orders. Since that's the case, just call him Meng, only without the Zhu. Do you really want me to read this translator's note? Yeah, you can read it by yourself. Leaf Fairy shook his head. Calling him Meng only is very difficult. In my esteemed opinion, since calling him Meng only is difficult, why don't we tear apart this character and we can call him Meng Sui? Peach Tree Trunk Fairy said. Wrong. When you tear open the character Meng, the character at the bottom, less a Pie, isn't the character Sui. So what character is that? Branch Fairy said. The Peach Valley 6 fairies didn't know the character Min was from the word Qi Min. Everyone in the crowd didn't want to follow their shameful behavior, so they didn't say anything. I think if we don't know Chinese, we have no idea what they're saying here. Trunk Fairy said, It may less a bit, but it's still swear. If it's best if I cut you to show you. If I cut you deeply, then a lot of blood will come out. So it's still blood. If I take into consideration the feelings between us and cut you lightly, then not much blood will come out. Although it's less, it's still blood. Branch Fairy indignantly said, If you're giving me a cut, then of course it's going to be light. There's no need to take into consideration the feelings between us. Why do you want to give me a cut? Trunk Fairy said, My care doesn't have cut. My hand also doesn't have a saber. Flower Fairy said, Then what happened if your hand was a saber? The crowd heard them talking even more nonsense as they talked more, and they couldn't take it anymore. Be quiet! Everyone's trying to listen to the chief's order. Branch Fairy said, He already finished giving his order. Why must we be quiet? Ling Wuchang raised his voice. Friends, the 15th of the 12th is still 17 days away. Everyone, let's move there slowly. By the time we got to Songshan, it'll be around that date already. This time we're not going in secret, so we'll be going with big banners and beating on drums. Tomorrow we'll buy clothes to make big banners. We'll buy cloths to make big banners and write World's Heroes going to Shaolin Temple to meet Sacred Lady. We'll also buy some leather drums to beat on when we're moving. When the Shaolin monks and secular disciples hear this, they'll feel discouraged before fighting. That was an untranslatable play of words. Yes. Yeah, if you don't know Chinese, then you probably don't get it. Most of these unorthodox people were actually good people. So when they heard of this plan, they were extremely happy and started to cheer loudly, shaking the whole valley. Among them, there were also a number of experienced and steady older people who didn't express their opinion. But when they heard the crowd feeling pleased, they just smiled. At dawn, Ling Huchong asked Zhu Qianqiu, Ji Wushi, an old man, to make the banners and buy some leather drums. At noon, they finished writing those words on the banner and had bought a few leather drums. Ling Huchong said, "We'll start our journey now. Along the road, we'll be passing a lot of towns, so we'll just keep buying more stocks there." The crowd were beating on the drums and roaring battle cries as they moved north in squadrons. Ling Huchong had seen how the Hangshan school's disciples were ambushed at the Xianxia mountain range. After some discussion, he dispatched 7 sects. 2 sects were sent to the front to act as sentries. 2 sects were protecting the left. Why are they calling it sects here? Shouldn't it just be like 7 groups? Like after some discussion, he dispatched 7 groups. Oh. 2 sects were sent to the front to act as sentries. 2 sects were protecting the left. 2 sects were protecting the right, and the other one stayed behind to help wherever needed, while the rest of the people moved with the main group. He also dispatched Han Shui's River's Divine Crow clan to act as messengers. The Divine Crow clan was a local clan, and their circle of influence extended from Hubei at the north down to Hunan at the south. If there were the slightest bit of trouble, they would know of it as soon as possible. As he assigned orders, besides the Peach Valley's 6 fairies, everyone obeyed his orders completely. In the few days that they were traveling, heroes continuously joined their group. They also had more banners and more drums as they went. Along with the sounds of drums, it was very noisy, with 2,000 people shouting along as they went towards Shaolin. So this is a huge group, right? They have 2,000 fighters here. When they arrived at the foot of Mount Wudang, Ling Huchong said, "Wudang School is Wulin's second biggest school. The name of their school flourishes, and they're second only to Shaolin. Even though we're going to rescue the Sacred Lady from the Shaolin School, we don't want to offend Shaolin. Naturally, we don't want to offend Wudang School either, so we'll avoid the main road to go across this area to show the leader of the Wudang School some respect and show them that we're not attacking their school. What does everyone think of this?" "Whatever Master Ling Hu says, we'll do it. We'll be satisfied, so long as we are able to rescue the Sacred Lady. So there's no need to do other irrelevant things or make powerful enemies with anyone else. What's the use of leveling the Wudang School, but not being able to rescue the Sacred Lady?" Old Man said. Ling Huchong said, "That's very good then. Please pass the order to stop the drums and lower the banners. We're turning to the east." In a short moment, everyone started east. As they were traveling that day, they saw a person riding a donkey coming towards them. Following behind him were 2 farmers, each carrying a basket on a pole on his shoulder. One was carrying vegetables, and the other one was carrying some firewood. The old person riding the donkey had a bent back and was coughing incessantly. The clothes he was wearing was full of patches. When the crowd saw this trio coming towards them without making way, a lot of them put their hands on the handles of their weapons. Along the road, they had been making a lot of noise, and whenever any pedestrians saw them, they immediately went to the side of the road, letting them pass. But these 3 people turned a blind eye to them and just kept on coming towards the group. Root Fairy scolded, "What are you doing?" as he pushed the donkey with his hand. The donkey neighed once before dropping down as its leg was broken. The old person riding the donkey was thrown to the ground and stayed down, huffing and puffing. Ling Huchong felt sorry as he stooped down to help the old man get up. "I'm really sorry, Elder. Are you hurt?" The old man was still huffing and puffing. What's going on? I'm a poor man." The 2 farmers put their loads down and stood in the middle of the road. They put both their hands on their waist and were looking angry. The person carrying the vegetable pantingly said, This is the foot of Mount Wudong. Who are you people to daringly hit people around here? The foot of Mount Wudong? What kind of place is that? Root Fairy asked. That man said, Everyone at the foot of Mount Wudong knows martial art. You're strangers here. Why do you act recklessly here in the fields at the foot of Mount Wudong and ask for trouble? The people in the group saw that these people had yellow faces and were very thin. They were around 50 years old. When that person carrying the vegetable spoke, his breath wasn't strong, but he claimed to be capable in martial arts, so the people in the group were laughing loudly at them. You also know martial arts? Flower Fairy teased. That man replied, At the foot of Mount Wudong, even a 3-year-old can do shadow boxing. A 5-year-old can already use a sword. What's so rare about that? Flower Fairy pointed to the person carrying firewood and laughed. How about him? He also knows martial arts? The person carrying firewood replied, When I was small, I learned martial arts for a few months, but I haven't practiced it for several years now. This martial arts, they've become rusted now. Wudong School's martial arts is #1 in the world. It only needs to be studied for a few months, and you won't be our match, the vegetable person said. Leaf Fairy laughed. Why don't you do a few movements to give us a look? Show what? You won't be able to understand it anyway, the firewood person said. The crowd erupted in laughter, and they all said, We may not understand, but we can still look. The firewood person said, In that case, I'll show you a few moves then. I don't know if I still remember all of them. Lend me a sword. A person came out from the crowd and handed him a sword. The firewood man then went out to the middle of the hardened rice field and started to thrust to the east and slash to the west. After about 3 or 4 moves, he suddenly forgot what the next move was. He scratched his head, thinking for a little bit, then showed a few more moves. Everyone saw that his sword movements were not methodical, and his body and hand movements were extremely clumsy. They all clutched their stomachs, laughing loudly at him. What's so funny? Let me show you a few moves. Give me a sword, the vegetable person said. He then started to thrust and slash the sword very rapidly in a disorderly fashion, as if he was insane. This made the crowd laugh even harder. In the beginning, Ling Hucheng also laughed, but after seeing more than 10 moves, he was astounded. These two people's sword arts, one being sluggish, the other one being very fast, actually had very little flaws. Their moves looked very ugly, but the sword moves actually had many variations. It seemed that they had only displayed a fraction of the sword moves' power and didn't reveal the remaining potential power of the sword moves. Ling Hucheng immediately stepped forward and bowed towards them. He said heartily, Today, I paid my respect to 2 seniors and observed your high sword arts. I feel very honored. The 2 men put their swords away. The firewood person stared at him. Little kid, you understood our sword art? I don't dare to say that I understand. Both of you have profound sword arts. How would I dare to say that I understand them? The Wudong School's sword art is very famous throughout the world. It really makes one praise to the heavens. Ling Hucheng replied. Oh, little kid, what's your name? Ling Hucheng had not answered yet when a few people from the crowd called out, What little kid? He's our chief, Master Ling Hu. Country bumpkins, speak more politely. The firewood person said, Ling Hu melon? Not Amao or Ago, but some kind of melon seed? Your name's really ugly. Ling Hucheng cupped his fist. Today, Ling Hucheng is able to see the Wudong's divine sword art. It's really admirable. I will go up the mountain to meet Priest Chongshu another day. I sincerely admire him. Can the two seniors please reveal your honorable surnames and given names? The firewood person spat on the ground and said, You have so many people making so much noise here. Beating gongs and drums non-stop. Is this a funeral procession? Ling Huchang knew that these two people must be masters from the Wudang school, so he respectfully bowed to them. We have a friend who is being detained inside the Shaolin temple. They're going there to beg Abbot Fang Zheng's mercy to release this person. The vegetable person said, So it's not a funeral procession, but you've hurt my uncle's donkey. Are you going to pay? Ling Huchang led 3 steeds over and said, These 3 horses aren't as good as the seniors' donkey, but I'm forced to ask the seniors to accept them. We juniors didn't know that it was the senior who was riding. Please forgive us. After he finished saying this, he led the 3 horses over to them. The crowd saw Ling Huchang's attitude becoming more and more modest and respectful. They saw that he was doing this on purpose and were very surprised to see this. You already know our sword art now. Do you want to compare some moves? The vegetable person asked. Junior is not the match of the 2 seniors, Ling Huchang said. The firewood person said, You don't want to fight, but I want to fight. At the same time he said this, he thrust his sword crookedly towards Ling Huchang. Ling Huchang saw this sword move was wonderful, as it covered 9 fatal points on his upper body. Good sword art, Ling Huchang called out, and at the same time he pulled his longsword and also thrust his sword. That firewood person looked at as if he just randomly thrust his sword at an empty space, and Ling Huchang countered by sweeping his sword in a circle at the same empty space. The 2 people had used around 7 to 8 moves. Each of their thrusts was always aimed at an empty space, and their swords had not clashed yet, but the firewood person kept retreating step by step. The vegetable person called out, Melon seed, you have a bit of skill after all, as he raised his sword and disorderly started to thrust and slash. In a short moment, he had slashed out around 20 times. Not only was each of his slash towards Ling Huchang didn't hit him, but the tip of his sword was actually still around 7 to 8 feet away from Ling Huchang's body. Raising his sword, Ling Huchang sometimes performed a move towards the firewood person, and sometimes he thrust at an empty space towards that vegetable person. The tip of his sword was also around 7 to 8 feet away from their bodies, but when these 2 people saw Ling Huchang's move, their expressions revealed their urgency, either to jump to avoid his slash or to brandish their swords to block. The crowd of heroes watching this were all stupefied. The tip of Ling Huchang's sword was still far away from the 2 people, and there wasn't the slightest bit of wind when he thrust his sword, and they were certain that he wasn't using any kind of invisible sword energy to attack. But why are these 2 people looking frightened, as if they were too late in avoiding or blocking the sword? So they're all like pretty far away, and they're just like slashing at the air, and but they seem to be actually fighting. As they observed more closely, the crowd came to understand that these 2 people must be 2 martial arts masters. At this time, when these 2 people were using their moves to attack, one was still attacking sluggishly, and one was still attacking like a madman. But at the same time, they still managed to concentrate fully on defending themselves. When they were avoiding or blocking Ling Huchang's attack, their movements were light and steady. Now there was no more laughter from the crowd. Suddenly, Ling Huchang heard those 2 people whistle and changed their sword art completely. The firewood person slashed his longsword in a large circular path, while the vegetable person used very fast movements, going back and forth, creating a star-like reflection with his sword. Ling Huchang pointed his sword at a slight upward angle, and unexpectedly he stopped completely. His 2 eyes were now sometimes staring at the firewood person, and sometimes casting a sidelong glance at that vegetable person. As his eyes looked at a certain place, those 2 people did one of these 3 things. They quickly changed their sword moves, or cried out, then retreated, or turned their attacks into defense. Ji Wushi, Old Man, and Zhu Qianju had good martial arts. They gradually realized that when these 2 people moved to defend themselves, it was because of Ling Huchang's stare. He was always staring at their fatal acupoints. They saw the firewood person lifted his sword to slash it down, and Ling Hucheng gazed at his lower abdomen's Shanggu acupoint. He had not finished his slash when he quickly withdrew it to block his Shanggu acupoint. At this time, the vegetable person thrust his sword towards Ling Hucheng. Ling Hucheng responded by looking at the Tianting acupoint, which was at the left side of his neck. That person hastily lowered his head, which caused his sword to penetrate deep into the hardened rice field. It was as if Ling Hucheng's two eyes were shooting projectiles, and he wouldn't permit Ling Hucheng's two eyes to take a look at his neck's Tianting acupoint. Those two people were still utilizing their sword moves, and the sweat on their bodies were seeping through their clothes. In a short while, their trousers had already become wet with their sweat. That old man riding the donkey had so far just stayed on the side and not said a thing. He suddenly coughed and said, Admirable, admirable. The two of you, step back. The two men replied together, Yes. But Ling Hucheng's eyes were still circling around, never leaving their fatal acupoints. The two people waved their swords and retreated at the same time. From the beginning to the end, they didn't manage to break away from Ling Hucheng's gaze. That old person said, Good sword art. Master Ling Hu, allow this old man to ask for your advice. Ling Hucheng replied, You flatter me, as he turned around and cupped his fist, greeting the old man. Only now the two people were finally freed from the restraint of Ling Hucheng's eyes. At the same time, they jumped backwards, feeling just like two freed birds as they flew for tens of feet away. The crowd cheered them. Even though the crowd didn't understand their sword arts at all, they could see the duo's high martial arts from the way they jumped, the distance they covered, and the beauty of their movements. The old man said, Master Ling Hu was very forgiving with his sword moves. If he were really fighting, you two would have 1,000 holes and 100 injuries on your bodies. And do you think he would have allowed you to finish your sword moves? Come here quickly to thank him. The two men quickly flew over and bowed deeply. The vegetable person said, Today I found out that there's a heaven outside this heaven, and there's another person above me. Master's high martial arts is very rare in this world. Please forgive me for my rudeness before. Ling Hucheng returned his propriety. Wudong's sword art is divine. Your two sword arts, one is yin and one is yang. Can they be the Taiji sword? The vegetable person said, Master is laughing at us. The sword art we're using is double ritual sword art. It is divided into yin and yang, but we haven't managed to combine them yet. Before, when I was watching on the side, I was having difficulties distinguishing the sword art's subtlety. If we were actually fighting for real, I would certainly not be able to take advantage of the sword art's weakness, Ling Hucheng said. The old man said, Why must Master be so modest? The spots that Master was looking at are definitely double ritual sword art's weak points. This type of sword art. He continuously shook his head. More than 50 years ago, Wudong School had two priests. It was on this road that the double ritual sword art was developed through their tens of years of hard work. I was aware that the sword art consists of one yin and one yang, soft and hard. He let out a long sigh. I am also aware that this sword art would not stand against a master swordsman. Ling Hucheng respectfully said, These two uncles' sword arts are already so wonderful. If it were Wudong School's priest Chongshu or the other masters, then it would be impossible for me to distinguish the secret of the sword art by myself. Junior and friends here have gone past the bottom of Wudong Mountain, but we currently have a matter we must do, so we have to be impolite and not go up the mountain to pay our respects to priest Chongshu. Once we finished with this matter, I would go up to the Wudong Monastery and kowtow to the gods and priest Chongshu. At first, Ling Huchang was feeling haughty towards them, but after seeing the hard and soft aspects of their sword arts together, and the many miraculous variations of it, he actually felt some admiration in his heart. Thus, although he had discovered the flaws in the sword moves, in his heart he actually really admired them. After all, in this world, which sword move didn't have flaws? He was guessing that this old man must be the Wudang School's first-class master. That was why he said these few sentences so sincerely. That old man nodded his head. You're still young, but you're not arrogant at all. This is also very rare. Master Ling Hu, were you taught by Huashan School's senior, Feng Qingyang? Oh, he guessed right. Ling Huchang was startled and thought, wow, his eyesight is so good. I didn't expect that he would find out about my sword arts' background, even though I can't disclose Grand Marshal Uncle Feng's whereabouts because he already inquired frankly. I couldn't lie to him. He said, Junior was lucky. I once had the opportunity to learn some of Grand Marshal Uncle Feng's sword art at a superficial level. These words had two meaning, and it didn't reveal that Feng Qingyang had once taught him personally. He revealed that he had learned the martial arts of Feng Qingyang, but he didn't say specifically that he learned from Feng Qingyang. That old man smiled slightly. Superficial knowledge. Superficial knowledge. Hey, superficial knowledge of Senior Feng's sword art. Is it that easy to acquire? He took the sword from the firewood person's hand and grasped it in his left hand. Let me receive some questions from this superficial knowledge of Senior Feng's sword art. Ling Huchang said, How can Junior dare to fight Senior? The old man just smiled slightly while he slowly turned to the right and raised his left hand upwards till his sword was in front of his chest. The point of his sword started to move circularly, as if it was surrounding a ball around the size of 2 palms. Ling Huchang watched his sword attentively, as he understood that this move contained infinite variations. That old man slowly moved forward with his sword still circling. Ling Huchang felt a dense cold air pressing up to him, and if he didn't return his move now, then he wouldn't be able to do it later. He said, Sorry for offending Senior. He wasn't able to see the weakness in the sword movement, so he just made a false thrust with his sword. Suddenly, that old man threw his sword into his right hand. With a flash of light, the sword slashed towards Ling Huchang's neck. This slash was an extremely fast killing movement. The spectators couldn't help but gasp in worry. But as the old man exerted himself in this strike, Ling Huchang saw a weak point at the lower part of his body. He thrust his sword towards the old man's Yuan Yue acupoint at the lower part of his body. The old man moved his sword to block the thrust, and the two swords clashed. Both people retreated a step. Ling Huchang felt that the old man's sword was laced with internal energy, which made his right hand shook. Ling Huchang could also feel the needles and pins on his arms because of the impact. That old man was also surprised, and an expression of amazement could be seen on his face. The old man switched his sword to his left hand again and drew 2 circles in front of his body. Ling Huchang saw that his sword moved continuously and protected his whole body. It was unexpectedly without any flaws. Ling Huchang was secretly amazed. I have never seen a sword art without any weakness before. If he attacks like this, how do I break it? Perhaps Senior Run Wo Xing's sword art is more powerful compared to this old mister, but every move of his still had a weakness. How can it be that this old man's sword art has no weakness at all? He started to feel afraid, and beads of sweat started to form on his forehead. That old man formed his right fingers into a sword form, and his left hand was continuously moving. Suddenly, he thrust out, the tip of the sword vibrating. No one could see where the sword was aiming at. This thrust enveloped 7 major acupoints on Ling Huchang's upper body. But because of this, Ling Huchang was able to see 3 weaknesses on his opponent's upper body. He did not need to attack all these weak points. 1 would be sufficient to take the old man's life. He thought, when he's defending, he has no weakness at all. But when he starts to attack, there's still a weakness that can be attacked. as he casually pierced his long sword towards the old man's left eyebrow. If the old man continued with his thrust, then his left forehead would be pierced first. Even though his thrust was earlier than Ling Huchang's, it was still a step too late. The old man quickly turned his sword around. Suddenly, Ling Wuchang saw a few circles of white light. Big circle, small circle, upright circle, slanting circle. They were all flickering incessantly. As he saw these flowery patterns in his eyes, he quickly turned his sword and slantingly attacked the sword circles. Tang! As both swords clashed with each other. Ling Huchang felt his arm tingling from the impact. That old man continued to move his swords, creating more and more flickering circles as they moved. Not long after, his whole body was surrounded in the middle of these rings of light. One circle of light had not yet disappeared when another circle of light was formed. Even though his long sword was extremely fast, there was no sound of the sword's edge splitting the air at all. It indicated that he had reached the stage of perfection where the sword was soft but yet still strong. At this time, Ling Huchang couldn't see any weakness in his sword art and felt as if there were thousands of swords protecting this old man's whole body. The old man was purely defending at the moment, so there was no weakness in his sword art. But this sword front was actually like a moving fort, and the thousands of light circles resembled a tide as it slowly rushed forward. That old man wasn't attacking using one move at a time anymore. He was now using tens of moves to protect himself, while at the same time he used this to attack. Ling Huchang was unable to resist this as he retreated to avoid it. He retreated a step, and the circles of light moved forward a step. In a short time, Ling Huchang had retreated 7 to 8 steps. The crowd saw that their chief was now in an unfavorable situation and was about to lose. They were holding their breath, watching, and cold sweat started to wet their hands. Roots Fairy suddenly said, "What sword art is that? It's like a child drawing some circles. I can draw too." "Come, I'll draw some circles. My circle would definitely be more round than his," Flower Fairy said. "Brother Linghu, don't be afraid. If you lose, we'll tear this old fellow into 4 pieces to vent your anger," Branch Fairy said. "What you said was wrong. 1, he's Chief Linghu, not Brother Linghu. 2, how do you know that he's afraid?" "Even though Ling Huchang has become chief, he's still younger than me. So once he's chief, then does he then also become Big Brother Linghu, Uncle Linghu, Grandpa Linghu, Great Grandpa Linghu?" Branch Fairy said. At this time, Ling Huchang retreated again, and the crowd was feeling very anxious. When they heard the Peach Valley 6 fairies talking nonsense, they now got angry. Ling Huchang retreated another step, and his left foot stepped into a puddle of water. A thought flashed in his mind. That day, Grand Marshal Uncle Feng repeatedly told me to keep in my heart that the world's martial arts is ever changing, and there are also unusual ones. But no matter how wonderful the opponent's moves are, they are still moves, so there must be a weakness. When Hero Dugu passed on his sword arts, he had no match in this world because he was able to see his enemies' weaknesses. Right now, this senior's sword art is circling around and has no weakness at all, but it must be because I had not been able to see the weakness yet. He retreated a few more steps as he gazed at his opponent's countless circles of light. Suddenly, a thought leapt into his mind. Maybe the center of the circle is the weakness. But if it's not a weakness, and I thrust it in there, he can twist his sword and cut my arm off. He also thought, luckily his way of attack can only go forward slowly. If he really wants to kill me, it won't be that easy. But if I keep retreating, that's just the same as losing. If I lose this battle, everyone would be discouraged. Then how would we be able to break through Shaolin and save Ying Ying? At the thought of Ying Ying's kindness towards him, if he loses an arm because of her, what's the harm in that? From the depths of his heart, he was really pleased to actually sacrifice an arm for her. He also felt that he owed her a lot, and only by suffering a heavy injury would he be able to repay her kindness. At this thought, he wholeheartedly hoped that his opponent would really cut his arm as he extended his arm to thrust his longsword into the center of the circle. A tang sound resounded as Ling Huchang felt his chest shook and felt blood bubbling forth, but his arm was still intact. That old man retreated a couple of steps and put away his sword. The expression on his face was odd. There were also expressions of surprise and shame, together with some expression of sympathy towards him. After some time, he said, Master Ling Hu's sword art is brilliant, and your courage and wisdom are excellent. Admirable. Alright, give me a break, guys. 5-minute break, okay? I'll be right back. I'm back. Oh. People in the chat like the song, huh? That's a super old song. What is it? In the 80s? Was it 80s or 90s song? Gotta be 80, right? Okay. So he just beat this old man who's probably some first class master of the Wudang school. Our hero is a funny dude. He's like, oh well, I might get my arm chopped off, but you know what? It'll be good to sacrifice my arm for Ying Ying. So let's just so I hope that my arm gets cut off. All right. At this time, Ling Huchang just realized when he took that risk to thrust his sword, he had actually succeeded in finding his opponent's sword art's weak point. It was just that this old man's sword art was really high. The center of the circle was actually the most dangerous place, and he had unexpectedly practiced this sword art so that it would also be the weak point. The thousands of swordsmen in the world, it would be very rare for one to be brave enough to go through this danger and thrust his sword in there. He was pleased with himself and thought, lucky, as he felt sweat running down his back. He quickly bowed. Senior's sword art is divine. I'm really indebted to your advice. The benefit to Junior isn't shallow. His words were not just common talk. This fight had actually benefited his martial arts greatly, as it made him learn that the enemy's strongest point could unexpectedly be their weakest point. If he could break the move at the strongest place, then he would be able to break the rest of the weaknesses easily. You know, I have sound effects, but I never use them. So let's do some delayed sound effects. There you go. That's what the fight sounded like. Oh, he's emo enough. Yeah, he's emo enough to have his arm cut off. When masters competed in swords, one move could decide the outcome. That old man saw Ling Huchang dared to thrust into the middle of his circle of lights, so they didn't need to compare anymore. They didn't need to compete anymore. He gazed at Ling Huchang for a while before saying, Master Ling Hu, old man has a few words I want to say to you. Ling Huchang replied, yes, I'll listen to Senior's advice. That old man gave his longsword to the vegetable person and walked away to the east. Ling Huchang threw his longsword on the ground and followed behind him. He stopped beside a big tree. They were tens of feet away from the crowd. Even though they were still able to see the crowd, their voices would not carry that far. The old man sat down under the tree's shade and pointed to a big rock. Please, sit down. He waited for Ling Huchang to settle himself before continuing. Master Ling Hu, Among the younger generations, it's very rare to find someone with your kind of talent. Ling Huchang said, I don't dare. Junior's conduct is improper, and my reputation is already ruined. My own master can't even tolerate me. How can I deserve to receive seniors' praise? The old man said, The martial people of my generation, our conduct must be open and above board, and have no qualms in our heart. Although your action is sometimes bold and wild, and also not according to the custom, it is still gentlemanly. I secretly sent some people to find out what misdeeds you've truly done. It's not sufficient to just rely on the rumors and slanders going around in Jianghu. When Ling Wuchang heard him say this, it struck a chord in his heart. He felt gratitude towards this old man. He thought, this senior must have a high position in the Wudang school. Otherwise, how would he be able to send people to investigate my conduct? The old man went on, It's common that youngsters like you like to show off. Mr. Yue's outward appearance is calm, but he's easily offended. Ling Huchang quickly stood up and said, Respected master is like a father to me. Junior doesn't dare to hear about master. That old man smiled slightly. You didn't forget your roots. That's very good. The old man just made an indiscreet remark. Suddenly his face turned serious and asked, How long have you been learning the art of essence absorbing? He still respects his master so much, even though his master kicked him out of the school. That old man nodded. Wait. Ling Huchang replied, Half a year ago, Junior accidentally learned this skill. At that time, I didn't know that this was the art of essence absorbing. The old man nodded. So that's how it is. Just then we clashed sword 3 times, and with each clash, you absorbed my internal energy. But I was aware that you're still not good at using this disastrous demonic skill. This old man has an advice to give you, but I don't know whether young hero would listen to it or not. Ling Huchang was greatly terrified and quickly bowed. Junior will certainly obey Senior's precious words. The old man said, Although this art of essence absorbing has great power, it is also harmful towards the user's body. As your skill in it gets deeper, it will harm you even more. If young hero could abandon this demonic skill altogether, then that would be the best. Otherwise, you can just stop practicing it from now on. That day in the Plum Manor, he had heard Ranwal Singh telling him that there would be great danger after practicing the art of essence absorbing for some time. He wanted him to join the Devil's Sect before divulging to him the method to meld the internal energies together. When he heard what this old man said, he believed even more what Ranwal Singh said was true. Junior will never forget Senior's teaching. Junior already knows that this method isn't right, and already decided not to use this method to harm other people. It's just that my body already learned it, so even if I didn't want to use it, it's not that easy. The old man nodded. That's what I've heard too. I have another matter to raise with the young hero. Perhaps this will be difficult for a young hero to do, but as a hero, you must do what ordinary people won't do. In Shaolin Temple, they have a skill called Tendon Altering Sutra. Young hero must have heard of this skill before. I have. I heard that this is Wulin's most supreme internal energy method, and only the most eminent monks in Shaolin are allowed to learn this skill. Young hero is leading so many people to go to Shaolin. I'm afraid nothing good will come out of this. No matter which side is victorious, both sides would lose numerous masters and would bring bad luck to Wulin. Old man has no talent, but I'm willing to go to Shaolin to ask for the abbot's mercy, to give the Tendon Altering Sutra to young hero. Then young hero can disband this large group of people to stop this disaster from happening. What does young hero think of this? How about young Lady Run, who is being detained in the Shaolin Temple? Ling Huchang asked. Young Lady Run has killed 4 disciples of the Shaolin School and has also stirred up trouble in Jianghu and caused harm in the world. Great Master Feng Zheng put her into seclusion, not to take revenge for his own school. It is actually because of his kind-heartedness to benefit the Jianghu people. How can young hero with good conduct mix up with this nameless lady? Why should you associate with this devil sexist witch and ruin your reputation and future? I have received her kindness, so I must repay her. Junior appreciates Senior's good idea, but I don't dare to follow it, Ling Huchang said. The old man let out a long sigh and shook his head. When young people are drowned in beauty and has been snared by it, it's hard to free themselves from it. Ling Huchang bowed. Junior will take my leave now. The old man said, Wait. Although old man and the Huashan school doesn't have many dealings, Mr. Yue would surely give me some face. If you follow my advice, old man and Shaolin Temple's abbot will together guarantee that you will be accepted back into the Huashan school. Do you trust me? Ling Huchang was moved by this, as returning to the Huashan school was his biggest wish. From the level of this old man's martial arts, and from what he just said, the old man must certainly be a famous Wudang school senior. He said that Abbot Feng Zheng and he would guarantee this matter, believing that they would certainly succeed. Master had always taken into consideration relationship between everyone from the orthodox sects. Shaolin and Wudang were the 2 biggest schools in Wulin at the present time. When the leaders of these 2 schools speak out, it would be very difficult for Master not to do them the favor for the sake of their relationship. Master was like a father to him. This matter of him being expelled from Huashan was because he had made friends with Shan Wentian and Ying Ying and made Master lose face in front of all the orthodox schools. But if the leaders of Shaolin and Wudang acted on his behalf, Master would definitely accept him back. When he returned to Huashan, he would be able to see little Martial's sister from dawn to dusk. However, how could he just leave Ying Ying to suffer in a Shaolin cave at the back of the mountain? At this thought, he felt heat coming up his chest. If Junior can't rescue young Lady Run out of the Shaolin Temple, then I'll be a useless person. No matter if we win or lose in this matter, if I'm still alive after that, I will definitely go up Mount Wudang to thank Priest Changshu and Senior. The old man let out a long sigh. You don't regard your life highly, nor your master highly, nor your future reputation. You acted willfully just for this devil sexist witch. In the future, if she becomes heartless towards you and harms you, you won't regret it. My life was saved by young Lady Run. What's there to regret if I lose my life because of her? Ling Huchang said. The old man nodded. All right, you can go. Ling Huchang bowed to take his leave again. Then he turned around towards the crowd and shouted, Let's go! Fruit Fairy asked, That old fellow competed in swordplay with you, but how come there's no winner or loser? There's no need to compete then. Even though Ling Huchang and the old man dueled, the winner and loser had not been decided. It was because the old man merely decided that he wasn't Ling Huchang's match, and thus immediately gave up. But everyone else in the crowd didn't know that Ling Huchang had attacked the old man's sword art's flaw, so they didn't know what happened. Define sect. So sect is it's different from a group, right? A sect is like a school or a faction, right? Yeah, it's like an organization, and a group is just like a group of people. This senior's sword art is very high. If we kept on fighting, it wouldn't be easy for me, so it's better if we just don't fight, Ling Hucheng said. You're so stupid. Since there's no winner or loser, you should have just kept fighting and you definitely win, Fruit Fairy said. Not necessarily. What not necessarily? That old fellow is already much older than you, so of course he's not as strong as you. After a long time, you'll naturally get the upper hand. Ling Hucheng had not replied yet when Root Fairy said, Why is it when you're older, you're not as strong anymore? Ling Hucheng understood what Root Fairy meant. Between those 6 fairies, Root Fairy was the oldest, while Fruit Fairy was the youngest. When Fruit Fairy said, when you're older, then you wouldn't be as strong anymore. Of course, Root Fairy didn't agree. Trunk Fairy said, If the younger you are, the stronger you get. Then a 3-year-old child would be the strongest then? That's not true. A 3-year-old child can't beat the strongest. A 2-year-old child would be stronger than a 3-year-old, Flower Fairy said. You're also wrong. A 1-year-old child would be stronger than a 2-year-old. Trunk Fairy said, A fetus that hasn't come out of his mother's womb would be the strongest then, Leaf Fairy said. I can't believe we ended the chapter on that. Oh, we're done. We're done, guys. That was quick. That was pretty fast. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Did you guys like that chapter? That was cool. So yeah. So that old man, he's up there, right? And he's up there in the Wudong elite. It seems because he's very strong. Remember, like Ling Hucheng, he's basically like one of the top fighters now, right? Because like you saw in the last chapter where he just like flew around the battlefield, just defeating everyone, right? But he had some trouble with this old man, so this old man must be really powerful. Man, doing old people voice is not good on your throat. There's got to be a better way to do it. I must just not know how to do it. All right, before we leave. Let's have a drink. Alright guys, cheers. Good stuff. Alright, next time I think I'll have to drink beer. I have a 12-pack of Heineken. That's just there. Because I don't drink much beer. And it's just there and it needs to be finished. So I think we're gonna start with the beer next time. And finish that 12-pack. Why did I buy so much? Yeah, I think I bought that before the pandemic. So it's been there before the pandemic. So it's been what, a year? More than a year? Yeah. Mr. Paint. How did Mr. You like the Mr. Paint voice? How did the Mr. Paint voice go? I forgot. I never remember my voices. It's just a spur of the moment thing. I never remember the voice that I do, the voices that I do after the chapter. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, if you like the Mr. Paint voice, then maybe I'll go back and see what it sounded like. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I love you, and I'll see you next week.